it's a really good idea to purchase a mirror. You can make faces into it, and you can reference these faces for your character expressions. Let's speak for a minute more broadly about drawing from observation. It can be very hard to reconcile what you're looking at with all of your preconceived notions of what things are. There's a book I highly recommend called Drawing from the Right Side of the Brain, and there are a number of exercises in that book. There's one that we did in high school where we took an image of Albert Einstein and we turned it upside down, and then you try to draw what you see in the image. So it's great because you stop thinking in terms of all of these codified things. You stop thinking linguistically, and you just start looking at an image. You start looking at a photograph and seeing lines and contours and shapes. And that's the idea with drawing. Okay, so now we're going to get into a few crucial steps. We're going to get into sound synchronization, and we're going to get into painting actually also. So digital cell painting, very, very simple, okay? There are 1,000 ways to do it poorly. So something that a lot of people try to do is they try to use the paint bucket tool to just dump a bunch of color in, and I don't recommend it because what you'll notice is that it will work for 90% of the area, but you'll get these weird, they look like weird digital artifacts in the margins. Not an altogether intentional look. So what I recommend is actually doing your drawing on one layer, right? And tighten this up, make it nice and self-contained. The eyes. So yeah, some people will just use the paint bucket tool to just dump a bunch of color directly in, and that is not something I recommend. You'll get all sorts of weird artifacts. It'll work for 90% of the area you dump it into, but it just won't quite look right along the margins of your line. It won't quite look right along the edges of your line. So what I recommend doing instead is think about cells again for a minute and what we learned about cell animation and how the back side of the cell is painted. Let's go to our paint tool, okay? And we're going to create a separate layer just for the color. Okay? So let's create, we're going to create a folder here. We're going to call it cell color. Okay. Now, we just want to make sure that this layer is behind, oh, excuse me. Let's give them a flesh color. Let's make him sort of a weird purpley pinky color. Okay, we just want to make sure that we're coloring behind the line. You see, this way we can just paint, we can clean things up, and we're not doing anything to damage our line drawing. And this is a part of the process where I do really recommend music. One of the things about the Richard Williams book that we used to make fun of in college is there's this whole spread about how you're not supposed to listen to music while you draw, and it's questionable. I think there are certain parts of the process where you are perfectly fine listening to music, and I think coloring is one of them. Usually best to save coloring for the end because it's an area where you can just sort of switch into zombie autopilot mode and let your limbs sort of take over for you. And remember, with the Wacom pen, I can click on the side, make the brush larger if I want. Okay. I'm going to sort of be gentle around the eyes because we're going to color the eyes, each eye separately. But we'll do the eye colors on top of this color level. That's what's great about doing everything digitally. If you were working with physical media, like you saw with the Orco cell, there's a point at which the surface you're coloring just becomes sort of saturated with media. You don't really have that issue so much if you're working entirely digitally. The problem you do have, though, is that texturally everything can start to feel a little flat. So sometimes what I like to do is I'll do 90% of the work digitally, and then maybe what I'll do at the very end is I'll do some quick paintings on paper and digitize them, just so I can incorporate them into the animation and just give it a little bit of texture. Okay, we're going to give them some teeth too, but we can do that on the bottom. We can do that on yet another layer. We'll put that underneath his skin so we don't. Excuse me. Make sure you're on the right layer. Okay, there you go. See? Nice and easy. And as long as we're here, let's make his tongue nice. We want to differentiate it from the, well, he's got pink skin. Let's give him a blue tongue. Why not? We can do this on the same layer as the teeth. Okay, look at that. Okay. Save. All right, where are our eyes? So with the eyes, let's make sure each one of these has its own unique color. Okay. So that one, let's do that at 100% opacity. And we'll do the color layer underneath, as we just discussed. And let's use the eyedropper tool so that we can make the teeth match the eyeballs. There we go. Okay. And what we can do is we can click, shift and click, so the top level of the eyes and that color, we can link that. Let's just make that the same. We'll merge those layers. Okay, so that'll be the same thing. Okay, and then we're going to turn off that one. Okay, let's give this eye layer its own color too. And this is going to be nice and simple because this is just, oh wait, we skipped one. Yeah, let's do that one first. We'll give that its own layer. There we go. Bring the opacity up on the eye drawing. Very good. Okay, make sure you're on the right layer. Okay. Do the underside of his eye. Clean this up a little bit. Or you know what, no, we'll do this. You could do yet another layer for the white, but let me see if I can just very cleanly and very discreetly make the brush a little smaller. Yeah, let me see if I can just sort of pop it in there. Okay. Cool. All right. So then once again, we're going to shift, merge layers. Okay, there you go. You see? And same for this one here. Well, what's going to be really easy about this one is that because the eyes are closed, we're just going to do one consistent color. Okay. Once again, shift, select, merge layers. This should just be okay, and you'll see why here in a second. All right, let's go back up to the mouths. First mouth. Okay. And just like we did with the eyes, let's give each drawing its own color layer. All right, so this is the blue we had selected for tongue. Nice. Can I get rid of that now? Where is it? Yeah, okay, good. Good to clean up as you go, as with all things. All right, so back to the mouth shape. What was the color we used for the eyes? It'd be nice to keep that symmetry and that consistency. Okay, go back to his mouth. There we go. Okay. Okay. Oh. You know, it's something actually that I'm, realizing. Good idea to lift the pen up every once in a while. Don't try to do everything in one stroke, because sometimes you'll make a little mistake and you'll want to undo it, and you can't undo it without undoing like everything you've done for the past 20 minutes. And I know you get in the groove sometimes and it just sort of becomes one fluid thing. Try to lift the pen every once in a while, just as you need to click Command S every once in a while to save. Try to lift the pen every once in a while. Save yourself a little heartache. Okay, so just as we did with the eye layers, where we had the independent drawing layer and the independent color layer, let's merge those with the mouth. Mouth 1 is now one layer, okay? Okay, so now this mouth needs its own layer of color here. Okay, so let's do white for his teeth. Okay, and we're going to use this fantastic blue for his tongue. I love that blue. Could do it on a separate layer. I'm not going to bother right now. Okay. So you can see already how that's giving it a little more depth. Right, no teeth visible here, so we're just going to color his tongue. Okay. Then let's link those two. Okay, and let's link those two. Okay, excuse me, merge. Let's merge those layers. Okay, so now you can see everything's sort of taking shape here. Hello. Hello. Yep. All right, and just so that we're sort of more or less completing it, let's colorize his hair too. And we'll just make his hair a very, very, very dark variant of what his tongue is. Because why not? No. Let's make it green. Let's make it a nice bright green. Ooh, that's too bright. That hurts my eyes. Let's make it a little bit darker. That's a little too dark, but that's okay. Let's work with it. We're going to roll with that. Okay. And let's get these eyes varying too. The eyes aren't varying. Okay, let's get them to blink. Let's get them to squint. Oh, what's the issue here? Yeah. Hello. So we have things moving on 3 layers independently, right? We have the background, we have most of the face, we have the mouth, and we have the eyes. So now let's export all of this, and we'll assimilate all of this into a video timeline in Premiere.